bloody see. Can I see? I'll put this lamp on. I've got a lamp over there as well. Amber bought me a knit balloon lamp over shoulder. Right, this one is called Barrel 32. Very inspired title. A bit longer, I think, this one. I got into this a bit. It's like real life. Right. Patch was sunbathing. I'm always bloody sunbathing. Patch was sunbathing out in the garden with Belle. Used real names, you're not supposed to. But when this does get published, I'll change them. Both had been drinking a couple of cold beers and were chilled out. "What are you up to tonight, mate?" Belle asked. "You know me, I'll be down at the pub, girl," he answered. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. "Of course not, girl, it'll be a laugh. And I'm sure the boys will enjoy your company." They continued to soak up the summer sun for another hour, and then went inside to get ready for the evening. After they had cleaned up, changed, etc., they practiced some darts. Belle was playing really well and felt in a good mood for the evening. Patch was his usual brilliant dartsmanship self and hit 3 180s in the session. They left the house locked the door behind them and began to walk to Paul's. They arrived at 7:40 prompt. As usual, Paul wasn't ready, and they sat on the bench in the garden. "I've sat on this fucker many a time, girl," Patch muttered to Belle. "Is he ever ready?" she asked. "No, not yet, but I've only been coming round for about 5 years," he joked. "Hello," Paul said, as he came through the front door. "All right, mate," they said in unison. All three then walked to the Portland Oak, their local boozer. "No match tonight, but I reserved the darts room so we can practice," said Patch. Would that be me who reserved? That'd probably be Paul. "You won't beat me," Paul bragged. "Fuck off, of course I will. Multiple times at that," Patch returned. They arrived at the pub. Patch opened the door, and the place was heaving. "Fuck, it's busy in here," Paul uttered. They squeezed their way through to the bar. The Guinness was already being poured for Patch as he approached. "How do you know I want that, then?" he joked. "Well, it's not difficult, is it?" Will replied with a grin. Belle had a vodka and lime. "What are you having, Paul?" "My usual," he answered. "We haven't got any lagers you like," he said. "Really? That's bloody good, isn't it?" he moaned. He looked into the back room and pointed. "What's in that barrel?" he asked. "Just put it on, mate. It's a new lager we just got in. Want a sample?" "Yeah, go on then." Will passed Paul a small glass to sample the lager. Paul tipped the golden liquid into his mouth. "What do you think?" Will asked. "Ah, not my cup of tea," he replied. "Well, no, it's lager," Patch laughed. "Can I try, please?" Patch then sampled the drink. "It's okay, but I wouldn't want a pint of it," he said. Paul ended up having a pale ale, and the three of them went into the darts room. As they entered, Bat and Ross were having a game of darts. They all greeted. Belle, Paul and Patch sat on the comfy sofas in the corner. They chatted for a while, then suddenly Bat said, "Should we get some kind of match going?" They played the bullseye and set up pairs. Belle was furthest from the bull, and as there was 5 of them, she scored for the pairs. It was Patch and Paul versus Ross and Bat. Patch and Paul thrashed the other two and played best of 3, and it was repeated a complete trouncing. "We are a formidable pair at darts, mate," Paul said, happily. Belle started thrumming some darts by herself, whilst Ross and Bat had a smoke. Patch and Paul sat on the sofas. "Are you okay, mate?" Patch asked. "I'm not sure, mate. My leg isn't working properly," he replied. "You what?" "I tried to lift it, but it's really heavy, and I can't move it," he continued. Then Patch leaned over to have a look, but he noticed his arm wasn't responding either, and he could see his veins were protruding and were a black colour. "What the fuck?" he shouted. "Look at my arm." Paul looked. "Oh my God," and lifted his jeans leg. His leg was the same, dark protruding veins, and he couldn't move it. Are you playing, you knobs?" Belle asked. Paul tried to stand, but instantly fell over. Patch made it up okay, tried to pick his darts up, but his arm was totally useless. You two bloody spazzes, Belle laughed. They didn't find us funny at all. Well, can you at least get me another round in, one of you? She asked. I'll go, it's my turn, Patch answered. At least I can walk and I can carry one glass at a time. He left the darts enclosure and walked towards the bar. As he neared the bar, he realised all wasn't well. He stood still and viewed the pub. Possibly 75% of the building was occupied by very strange looking people, dark veins all over their bodies and what looked like foam oozing from the corners of their mouths. And then he realised some of them were staring back at him. He slowly began to walk backwards, feeling his way along the wall. He got back to the dart arena. Hey, guys, he whispered. What's up with you? Where's my bloody drink? Belle yelled. I don't want to alarm you, but there's something very odd going on in this pub. He continued to whisper. What are you on about? Belle replied. Look around the corner. He ushered her towards him. She peered around the wall. What the holy fuck? She whispered. Then she watched as one of the foamy-mouthed creatures bit into the skull of a non-foaming man. His brains proceeded to squirt on the table and floor. The creature then picked at the brains and fingered them into its mouth. Matter oozed between its clenched teeth. This is like Shaun of the Dead, Paul piped up. We need to get out of here, he carried on. Luckily, the darts room had a patio door that they could make their exit by. Patch grabbed the door handle with his good hand and pushed it open. But outside there were a few of these creatures slumped over normal corpses eating at their brains. If we are quiet, we can get down in this alleyway. They are distracted at the moment, Patch whispered. Patch and Belle tiptoed through the exit. Paul hopped from behind. Patch and Belle managed to get to the alley, but Paul's hopping made too much noise and the creatures were alerted. Luckily, these creatures were not the fast kind, but the slow and lumbering type. Paul hopped towards his pals and they fled. They hid in a neighbouring garden and whispered. Do you know what I think has happened here? Paul asked. Not a fucking Scooby, Belle replied. Well, I noticed on the way out that the creatures that had that new ale at their tables and the normal people had their usual tipples. God knows how I noticed, but I did. So that barrel 32 is the culprit for this zombie-cation, is it? Patch asked. Yeah, it looks like it, he replied. They walked home, being very careful not to be seen by any creatures. Paul went to his house, Belle and Patch got home and both went into their rooms. Night, Belle. See you, Tosser, Belle replied. Patch undressed and sat down to watch some telly. His budgies woke up and started flying around the room. Ugh, you dirty bastard, Patch yelled. A piece of bird shit had landed on his eyelid and into his eye. Oh, shit. Ah. He went to the sink and washed it clean. He decided to go to bed. He had had a very adventurous evening and was feeling shattered. He gazed at his mutated limb before his eyes closed, and he drifted into a deep sleep. The light creeping around the blackout blind lit his room, awakening him. He yawned and rubbed at his eyes. Then he suddenly realised he had raised both arms, with no problem. He looked at his arm. It was back to normal. It looked good as new. Now how the fuck has that happened? He questioned. He grabbed his phone. He texted Paul. How's your leg, mate? After a few minutes his phone pinged. It's fucked. I think it's worse. Patch tried to understand what could have happened. Why had he healed but not Paul? The only thing he could possibly come up with was the budgie shit. Had the shit from the bird's arse somehow got into his bloodstream and for some reason caused a cure to the zombie limb? It seemed like a ridiculous idea, but he had nothing else he could think of. Patch washed and got dressed. He then flapped a newspaper. Oh, the budgie flew around the room in a panic, defecating as they did so. Both budgies. Yeah, Patch collected some shit and took it over to Paul's. He explained everything, and Paul agreed to let Patch push some bird shit into his mouth. He gagged and spluttered. Just take your fucking medicine, you twat, Patch yelled. He looked like a slapped arse, his face contorting all over the shop. They sat there waiting. Well, how long before something happens? He asked. No idea. I went to bed and woke up fine, so I can't answer that. Crack a couple of beers open, mate. Can you get them? They're in the fridge, in the middle, in the kitchen. If I get them, they'll spray every fucking where with me hopping about like a twat. They both laughed. They sat drinking their beers. Look! Patch pointed at Paul's leg. It had visually changed. The veins were virtually gone. Paul outstretched his leg and tried to stand. Fuck me, it's okay, mate. And he did a lap of the room. Ha ha! He was so relieved. So that's proof. The bird shit is definitely a cure, Patch stated. Let's go to mine and collect as much as we can. God knows they shit constantly, and the hard little nuggets will be just like tablets. They collected a mass of bird droppings into an old plastic bottle and started to walk into the town, looking for any of the creatures. How the fuck can we administrate these? Paul said. Well, one of us can grab them from behind and hold the arms, and I'll drop one in its mouth, he answered. Sounds fucking dodgy to me. Well, we can only try, can't we? They got to Budgeon's and then noticed their first subject. The creature was stumbling around like a pissed toddler. Paul sneaked up behind it, then quickly grabbed its arms from behind and held them behind it. Patch hurried over and went for its mouth. The creature was snapping with its mouth, trying to bite him. Patch saw a branch on the floor and wedged it in the creature's mouth. He then threw a lump of bird shit into its mouth. Within seconds the thing seemed to calm. Its deranged eyes cleared and Paul let go of its arms. It just stood still, and they agreed they could leave it there. It was of no threat to anybody. Throughout the day, they repeated the procedure. They must have dosed at least 80 of these things. They stood still as statues all around the village. They went into the oak and asked Will how many pints in a barrel. He said 340, but then revealed the barrel was still 3/4 full, and they realised that they had probably got almost all the creatures. They explained the situation to Will. He agreed to pull the barrel down the drain. I must admit, I noticed we had a funny old crowd in here last night, he commented. They walked back to Patch's. They started to play darts in the front room. They suddenly heard a bang from upstairs. Patch walked into the hallway. Belle, you home? He called. No answer. But then he saw...
There is no incoming call.
Fuck off. Then he saw a shadow on the landing. Belle suddenly appeared. Oh my fucking god, Patch screamed. She's turned. She's fucking turned. Belle clumped down the stairs, mouth wide open, her eyes red, veins protruding around her skin. Paul had the foresight to roll a dumbbell towards her, and as she stepped off the bottom stair, her foot stood on the weight and it rolled forwards, sending her falling flat on her face. Patch grabbed a pen, pushed it between her teeth, and pushed the bird shit into the gap. Belle went motionless, and they relaxed. After a few hours, Belle came back to them. She had no recollection of anything that had happened. They all sat there and had some bacon and egg rolls and chatted. They were completely unaware, fuck's sake, that fruit bat was on his way round, and he wasn't the fruit bat they all knew and loved. What about that one, eh? Quite good, isn't it? That ain't a successful movie in the future. I don't know what will be. Adrian! Adrian!